Will, the another guy we didn't really get a chance to get into him too much yet, but Lonzo Ball, man. Just the way that he's been playing these past few games. I know when we were doing the show recently, that's a flex because I did a show with the GOAT. Recently, we were doing a show. We talked about him and just how when he's on the floor, you used to see him working on certain things, and you've been watching him these past few games putting everything together. Tonight, I think you just saw an example of how much closer he is to just being super consistent in what he does. Not the same player, but just having that consistent play. The 12 points, the 6 assists, the 3 steals, just the calming influence he has on the floor for those guys when he's out there. What are you seeing when you're looking at Lonzo Ball? And do you think that there's more to come from Lonzo, or should we just say, you know what, this is the new Lonzo that we should be expecting?
I mean, it's a tough question, right? Like he's already in such uncharted territory with the return to play from the multiple surgeries that he had in his knee and the cartilage transplant. I mean, nobody's been able to come back from this. The Bulls, Billy mentioned this after I think their last home game, maybe against the Spurs, that like there are no plans right now to like continue to increase his minutes limit. So that's going to stay around 22, I think 22, 24. And maybe there's going to be days where Billy doesn't get it exactly perfect and he's up to 25 or 26. Maybe there's days where he goes only 19 or something like that. But just in terms of like actual on the court production, I think it's hard to expect that much more from him because he's not going to be at a point where he's playing like a starter's workload. But just in terms of what he's actually doing out there, I mean, every game, at least once, you can see him, sneak behind a big who's got the ball at the slot or at the elbow and just steals it from him, just takes it away, and off we go. The Bulls are on a fast break. He's hitting his threes today, and I think he continues to mention that like his wrist is still getting there. He's still, just working that back into full health, and I think you're starting to see him shoot a little bit better these last few games. But he was also just saying like what a joy and privilege it is to be able to play with Zach. He called him a top 3 shooting guard in the league, and like it's hard not to see the correlation of Lonzo playing and Zach playing his best basketball. And so I think those two really bring the best out of each other. And Lonzo said that too. I mean, he loves playing with Zach, and he feels like Zach makes him a lot better. But it's hard not to notice the way that Lonzo makes Zach better. I mean, the full court passes, the backdoor cuts, just the attention that they draw from the defense and finding open shots. They're a really good pair. And so it's nice to see them back on the court together.
You bring up the whole like gifting minutes for the sake of developing the younger guys versus trying to win, because that's a conversation that's been ongoing. Fans are, I think, a little bit confused about it some nights. The Bulls were winning comfortably, and a lot of people I saw on Twitter and people in our comments earlier tonight were saying, like, why not more modest minutes in that second half if you're that comfy? But more particularly, I'm curious if it came up with Billy or with Pat or with anybody. Do you think it was a message that Billy was sending that on the second consecutive game where Pat manages 2 points, he plays only 19 minutes compared to the other 4 fellow starters of his who played high into the 20s or the 30s? And some Bulls fans in the comments are wondering, is that enough of a message? Is it time for Billy to bench Pat? Like, did either of them reflect on the game that Pat had tonight after that stinker against the Pacers?
No, we didn't talk to Billy about Patrick. They, I guess, talked a bunch about him after the Pacers game down in Indiana, which I was not at. So a lot of commentary out of that game. But I mean, I would say like Billy is committed to playing his veterans, but he's also not like gonna just play guys when they're playing poorly. And that's why you see games where it's like, okay, the Bulls are down 10. You got to get Javon Carter in here during the first quarter to get some threes up. Like Billy isn't afraid to just try stuff to see if he can get a spark somehow. And I think the same goes for if you're playing poorly. Like he's not opposed to finding somebody who will give him something better. And that happened last year in the starting lineup after 5 games. Patrick got benched for Torrey Craig. It happened, previous other times with Javonte Green. And Patrick just hasn't shown that consistency. I don't really have anything new to say about Patrick. Like he's not playing well. I don't really feel like beating a dead horse with him. Like he's just not playing well. And it's what more can you really say? But I do think also that he is the one power forward on this roster that Billy trusts defensively. And I actually liked the way that he approached the game in the first half today. Like, he was going at Jordan Poole on switches. He had a couple of assists early, he had a steal, he had a block. Like, he was playing, I thought, really aggressively, and just the shots weren't falling. I think that probably impacted his confidence a little bit. But, I don't think the Bulls are in a position, like I said, they're a team that's trying to win. It's not like you can just say, I'm going to throw Modest or Dalen or Julian out there at the power forward spot, and that will be the starter, and they're going to play 36 minutes and off we go. It's like, those guys are minuses out there. Billy can't trust those guys to play heavy minutes, and that's why they don't. And so with the approach that they're taking, which is they're trying to win every game, they're trying to compete, they're trying to make the most of the season that they can. We can agree or disagree with that, but that's what the approach is. You have to play the players that are going to help you the most. And I think even though Patrick is not scoring right now, there's plenty of other things that he does well that Billy trusts him to do at a higher level than he does some of the other young forwards on this roster. Now, Torrey Craig has been out. Maybe that conversation changes when he's back, but I don't see Billy, and you can't even really go for guards right now because Io has been out and Lonzo did get a bunch of minutes. There's just not a lot he can do right now, with the rotation being what it is.
I did want to, since you brought it up, according to Billy, it's unlikely that Io will be back Sunday against the Kings. So they're probably targeting that Pelicans or Hawks game. But when he comes back, in your opinion, how does that change this lineup?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's one we've been asking basically since the start of the year. And we just haven't gotten a good answer to it yet because for one reason or another, Patrick missed a month. Then Io was out as soon as he came back. Lonzo's been out. So they haven't really had to manage that rotation in the way that I think you're kind of alluding to here. So I don't have a good answer for you. I think Billy certainly rides Io. I mean, that is somebody who gets a ton of minutes, and I would imagine that will be the case as soon as he gets back. But you can only play so many guards throughout the course of a game. But when your top 5 guys in your rotation, well, I guess 5 of your top 6 are Lonzo, Io, Kobe, and Zach, it's hard to, and Giddey, obviously, it's hard to put those puzzle pieces together and also be able to guard some of the big wigs that we have in this league. And so I think that's a huge question. Maybe guys like Patrick do get their minutes cut in that scenario, but at the same point, it's not like you're, leaning on Josh Giddey to be the defensive stopper of the Jason Tatums of the world or Zions. They kind of need Patrick out there to be that guy. And so I do think he will be.
We all silly like the mayor.